Hey everyone, this is Heather and Jenny with Surviving Darkness, and we are on episode 10. Yay! So this week we're just going to continue on talking about some of the things that we talked about last week, some of the issues that we still face on or into adulthood and the way that things have affected us. Some of the things that we still deal with in adulthood and some of the things that we're trying to overcome. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
I was thinking after we did our last podcast, and we go back and listen to them, I guess, just to see what we possibly could have expanded on. Because when we're talking, we don't really, I don't guess, think about everything.
Right.
And some things, I mean, even after all these years, have come back, and you're like, oh yeah, remember how this was going on and that was going on. So one of the things that really stood out to me was when all this stuff was going on, like, I guess we would maybe be the normal sassy teenagers every now and then.
Yeah.
So our dad would go to family members, and it was like, oh yeah, we've just been fighting over this and fighting over that, and they want to see this boy and they want to do this and they want to do that. So he would go like beforehand and sort of make us look bad in the eyes of other people. And as I'm gotten older and really thought about what that was just sort of a way that if we had decided that we were going to say anything, well, everybody's already got the bad impression of us.
Yeah, that we were, like you said, just the rebellious teenagers. And so, we were already doing all of this other stuff. And so he's already gone and talked to them, like you said, and just kind of brought up what we had done or supposedly had done.
And we could be even sitting right there. And we've got that look like you better keep your mouth shut. So we couldn't even argue the fact that that's not really how it is.
Yes.
So I would remember leaving those places and I just wouldn't talk. Yep. I mean, I was mad. I was livid. And he would be like, what's wrong? Really?
And you couldn't say anything back.
Right.
You knew, it didn't matter. For one, you weren't allowed to say anything back because the minute that you did, you were in more trouble because, you were running your mouth back.
Right.
And so, but then you just, like you say, you knew better because it was just going to be an argument, then something that would just go on for days and days and days. And it was just.
And it was totally turned around. It was like blown out of proportion. And sometimes it wasn't even that way at all. Yeah. But it was like, and then it was, they're just going through that rebellious teenage age.
Yeah.
And they're doing this and they're doing that. And and.
It was like I had said to you, whenever I had tried to get help, I talked to one of my friends and she talked to her dad. And then that person talked to our dad because they were friends. And so when that person confronted dad, he was like, oh, she's just upset because I won't let her talk to this guy, and turned everything around on me, like it was, that's the only reason that I had tried to say anything about what was going on was because I was mad at him. So after that, and nothing ever went anywhere other than, I guess his side was what was believed.
Right.
You just don't say anything more about it,
Right.
Because, that's exactly why I said something and tried to get help. No, it was not. It was because it was the truth. But in order to make people believe that that's what it was, and that there wasn't something going on,
right,
we were the ones that would have to take the blame.
Right. And then, like, even when we went to someone to get help, it was turned around on that person, and then it was like everybody in the neighborhood ostracized her for trying to help us because he's a good man. And she wasn't lying.
No.
We weren't lying. She was the one who actually tried to reach out and help us. And it was all turned around on her.
And after all of these years, we have both reached out to her and said, Thank you for being the one that tried to help. And the ones in the other people in the neighborhood, which is what he did. He had everybody fooled, not just in the neighborhood. It was everywhere. He had everybody fooled.
Right.
But like you said, those people in the neighborhood were just causing trouble when they were trying to help you, when she was trying to help you. And so therefore, everybody was against her. And so we were allowed to go play, but we weren't allowed to go in their house or anything like that. We had to always stay outside because you never knew, like, I guess what could happen if you went in their house,
Right.
So.
But then it also affected her kids too, because the other parents in the neighborhood didn't really want their kids going there because, she might make something up.
Mm-hmm.
So there was more than one family messed up because of one person
mm-hmm.
and their choices. And we were also talking earlier that we had a lot of people say, well, I suspected that there may have been something because something just didn't seem right. And just as an educational thing, I'm not putting anyone down, just educational wise, if you think something, ask that person, because Jenny and I were both talking earlier that if someone would have looked at us and said, is there anything going on in your home? Do you feel safe? Anything, I can guarantee you, we would have broke down crying, and they would have known that there was something very not right going on within those walls.
If we would have been separated from him and asked that at a different time. Absolutely. Right. Yes. Because, we would have been scared to say anything, but at the same time, we were going through enough that it was like, no, I just want someone to help, like you say. And
not just that. Like what we're going to focus on too was the whole, it's an adult. So you respect them, and if they ask you a question, you answer them honestly.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it would have been hard for us to have even looked at them and lied and said, oh no, there's nothing going on, we're good.
Right. Yeah.
No one really put their thumb on exactly what it was to just come out and say, hey, is everything good within your home? Are you good?
We knew that there was something different. There was something, there were things that we just couldn't understand, but we couldn't put our finger on it, and we didn't really want to say anything or ask anything if we didn't know for sure. And like Heather said, if you suspect something, then ask. And then whenever we were at your church and we were talking the other night, and I had said, as for like the person who's going through it, if you try to get help and you don't get help with that person, keep going, because you have no idea. It may take 50 people for you to reach out to, but that 51st person or that 50th person may be the one that says, okay, wait a minute. There's probably some truth to this, or there's something that needs to be done. Don't just give up. And I know that that's hard when you're in that position, because you get beat down, right? And you're like, well, there's no sense in trying, kind of like we did, but don't. If you have any, if there's any way that you can talk to anybody about what's going on, even if it's just saying, listen, I need help, something like that, then do that.
So how many years has it been since the trauma or the abuse and stuff stopped with you to now?
25.
So it's taken you 25 years to even talk about something that happened 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So when you don't try to get that help, I mean, that's 25 years of trauma that you've tried to deal with on your own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of stuff that comes from that kind of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
It's 25 years of not talking about it. 25 years of living in your own personal hell, in your head and everything else, and not letting out those things that have caused issues your whole life. Pretty much your whole life.
And yes, we have God, we have that relationship, and that is a huge help to have him on your side, and your church family and the people around you like that to support you. But sometimes you need somebody else who knows how to help in like a therapeutic way.
Right.
And that's what they're trained to do.
Right.
And that's what I found out last year with when I started therapy was they kind of know what to ask you. You know, I mean, that's just their job is to kind of know what to ask you to get you to talk about things that you may not ever talk about, and that they're not there to judge. They're there to listen to you and try to help you. So,
right.
Now, how old were you when things started?
I was 13.
Okay.
And that was between my 7th and 8th grade year. That's when, like, the first thing happened that I had gone to the neighbor about.
Okay. Mine was 12 because it was the summer after my 6th grade year that everything started.
Well, you have to think, too, that you developed younger than I did.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I did. And we talked about just feeling like my first time nothing had ever happened with me, but the first time that I ever felt strange when we had somebody in the house that ended up being someone that did a lot of things to us.
Right.
I was home from school sick, and Mom worked, during the week. So Dad was home, and I remember one of his friends coming over, and I was like I said, in the 2nd grade, and I just had on like a really long t-shirt and just like a 7-8-year-old girl runs around, like a nightgown on. And I remember that friend of his coming in, and he didn't say anything. He didn't do anything, nothing like that. They were just sitting in the living room, and I was in there with them. But it was just a feeling that came over me that it was like just creepiness. Just a very, very odd feeling. And like I said, nothing had ever happened to me at that point, nothing. And I still remember that thinking I just wanted him to leave. And it was weird because he'd been at the house numerous times. I'd never felt anything like that. But at, however old I was in 2nd grade, I was already starting to just not be comfortable around him. And I didn't know what was going on with you at that point. Because like we had said before, whenever the social worker came and talked, or whoever it was that came and talked, I had no idea about anything. And that's what I told him. I said, no, nothing's ever happened to me. I don't know anything about anything, because it hadn't at that point.
Right.
So and I guess that's another thing that God we've talked about giving us feelings about people. And even in the 2nd grade, when I didn't know any different, I was so young, I still knew that there was something about that person that I did not like at that young age.
Right. He was different.
Yes.
Very quiet, almost like he stared at you the whole time he was there.
Yes.
Never really said anything, just stared.
Yes. And we always had friends over, and like Dad always had people over, we'd goof off and we'd wrestle around and everything like that. And no one ever made me feel uncomfortable.
Right.
But it was something from that day on. So, and then I didn't know at that point what was going to happen.
Right.
So
with him, it started with me after I graduated from high school. We had gone to the beach, and I had gotten really, really sunburnt, and I was asleep on the couch, and I don't even know that I heard him come in. I didn't even know that he was there. And I woke up with him rubbing lotion on my sunburn on my legs. And I jumped up off the couch, and it scared me to death. And I was like, don't touch me.
I'm sure.
And then Dad was like, he's like, walk in here and talk to me a minute. So I had to walk in another room so that he could tell me that I am to sit there and let him put that lotion on my legs. And I'm not supposed to act like that. I was sound asleep. It scared me to death to wake up to this huge man rubbing lotion on my legs. And I'm like, what? Why are you touching me?
I don't remember when it started with him. And I can't even tell you like the first time that anything, I don't know that. I don't remember that. But I can tell you it was way before my senior year in high school. I was probably a freshman or a sophomore when that happened. So 14, somewhere along in there when that started with me, because it was the second house that we lived in when things started there with him.
Yeah, it was the same house for me that it started with him, but I mean, I was older.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So
I think that's where that second house is where most of the other people, that's when it started with me. And it was more of the people outside and more of the scary things in the first house, like the chairs and that creepy feeling and the red eyes and the knives in the headboard and the hatchets in the bed and things like that. That was more in that first house. The second house was when it started opening up more abuse with other people.
I didn't, like we talked before, I didn't have with all the other people, but mine was in the second house and then carried over, of course, to the other two. So something that we've talked about with that person that we're dealing with now is, I guess I want to ask you, because we've talked about this too, how do you really feel? How did you feel when you found out that he and his brother were shot and killed?
I didn't really feel nothing.
It's kind of how I was. You're supposed to, you feel bad because you're supposed to feel bad. You know what I mean? But I was like you. I really couldn't care.
Right.
And I was just, I felt bad for his family because we knew his family and, his wife and his kids, and they were good people, and we felt bad for them. But I was like you. I really didn't care one way or the other.
Right.
So be it. That's
right.
How things were supposed to turn out. And
the thing is the ones, it seems like the people that have hurt us the most, when God said vengeance is mine, he really meant it. Because all the people that hurt us the most died in ways that were really bad.
Yeah.
Dad suffered. I mean, he really suffered near the end.
Yes.
And I believe that he had that near-death experience, and after that experience in the VA, he was telling everybody about God, and I do believe that he honestly saw something. I do believe that he believed in God, and got his life turned around at that point. But he wasn't the same. He wasn't the same mentally after he left the VA.
No.
He wasn't. It was almost like dealing with a rebellious teenager boy.
It was.
Because he was going to do whatever he wanted. He didn't care. So he did suffer.
Yeah, I mean, he coded 3 times and, lost 60 pounds within those 4 months and had, quite a bit of stuff.
And then, I had sort of dated a guy, and he had stolen a bunch of stuff from me, and he passed away. My second ex-husband was very mean. He's gone. I mean, he totally pretty much destroyed my family. He tried
about, because that's something that we had talked about a couple episodes ago, and we said that we needed to, that would be another time that we would have to start talking about that. And now might be a good time to talk about how Satan brings things like that into your, it brings things like that into your life because, and even now you're still surviving past that, because it was 2-3 years of just torture for you and your family.
Right. And how the enemy works is he knew him better than I knew him. Brought him into the picture through mutual church friends.
Mm-hmm.
This was a person who claimed to be a pastor's assistant, was really into church and everything else, was going to church with me when we were dating and everything. And then within 2 weeks of being married, he was totally on the other end of the spectrum. He was crazy. He was no longer going to church. He was just downright evil. Mm-hmm. He would put me down any way he possibly could. He wouldn't leave his ex-wife alone. He was just crazy. There was stuff when we got divorced, when we cleaned out the garage, that you would use to make meth and stuff. But I mean, I can't say he was doing that. I don't have proof. But he would be up for days just talking crazy. And then one time, our brother had committed suicide and he shot himself. And my ex-husband was in the garage, and he liked to pick fights, and he would just on and on and on. And then when I would finally get mad and start saying something or standing up for myself, he would start recording the conversations to try to make me look like I was crazy. Mm-hmm. So he had started and was going on and on and on. So then I don't know. I don't know if he was really on the phone with anybody or what, but he went out into the garage. So I went out there, and he had locked the door. And I couldn't get in. And then a little bit later, I heard a gunshot coming from the garage. So I'm beating on the garage door, can't get in, and thinking that he's done killed himself mm-hmm. because of how crazy he was talking. And then he told me, oh, I fell asleep. No, what he did was another torturous thing. Yeah. Knowing mm-hmm. that my brother committed suicide, knowing how he committed suicide, he shot the gun to make me think that he had shot himself mm-hmm. and then would not answer me when I was freaking out. Right. Just as a way of torture, of mental abuse mm-hmm. was what it was. But he was fine. He had just shot the gun. He mm-hmm. didn't shoot himself. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew the reaction that was going to cause me. He knew that was going to send me into like a panic. Yeah. And that's the kind of things he did for 2.5 years.
Yeah, and he kept you, tried to keep you separated from everybody. Us, and yes, all the time. And I was terrified during that time for you, the kid, the boys, everything.
The looks that he gave me mm-hmm. were of pure hate. Mm-hmm. I got to the point that I was scared to go to sleep because I didn't know if he was going to kill me in my sleep. And then when I would look at him and say, "Why do you look at me like you hate me?" He was like, "I don't hate you. I love you. You're my wife." Mm-hmm. But no, his eyes were cold. Right. I mean, cold. So it was 2.5 years that I dealt with that. Mm-hmm. Of constant mental stuff.
And you were broken too. I mean, already at a really low point because you'd gotten divorced. That wasn't something that you wanted. So right. You were down anyways with that. And then some of the guys which I guess there was a couple that you dated in before him and then before now, that
right.
We all make silly mistakes and date
or the wrong people.
Yes.
I'm telling you, the enemy definitely brings the wrong people.
And that's what I was saying too, because yes, the enemy knows whenever you're down that you are more vulnerable. And so it brings dark people or things like that in to bring you down even more.
But he was disguised as a pastor's assistant, knew people that I knew, and they loved him. They thought highly of him.
Yes.
Which I don't think that they do anymore.
Right.
Or did after we got divorced. And it was like he knew that I was someone that was respected mm-hmm. by people. And he said that. I mean, he was like, everybody knows you. Everybody thinks highly of you. If they only knew what you're really like. If they only really knew you. Mm-hmm. And all that is another way to tear me down. It's almost like he was jealous of the fact that I knew a lot of people and that people cared about me. And he hated that.
Mm-hmm. He probably did because he didn't have that. He had at one point when I don't know if he was genuinely in church or what he was doing, but he had people that cared about him or respected him then. And then the true person comes out and they find out who he really is and how he is. And, and he was very manipulative not just with you, but with his friends too, like he would leave your house and go and stay with them. And then next thing you know, they'd be saying things to you about what he had done there. And so,
yeah. I mean, my boys walked me down the aisle. They liked him. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't no time that it was just horrible.
Right.
The way he was treating them. And then he had me so convinced that it was them. Mm-hmm. That this one is doing this and this one thinks this and this one's doing this. And it was just horrible. And it was a constant struggle to where my youngest son wound up moving out. My oldest son moved out like as soon as he turned 18. And it was like the damage was done.
Right.
So it's been years trying to build that relationship back up. And I was close, especially with the youngest. We were very, very close. And he destroyed that. He was jealous of that. Mm-hmm. He went after him. Mm-hmm. Because he was the closest to me. He was going to destroy everything that meant anything to me. My relationship with my kids, my finances, my reputation, everything. I mean, he was out to destroy me.
And we were genuinely scared. Like, I had even told you several times, I said, I'm worried that he's going to kill you.
Yeah.
All of you.
I was scared too. I don't know. It was like almost like he had me so warped in the head. It was like I needed to protect him.
That's what I was getting ready to say was, and it was just another way that the enemy does come in and fight you, or take over. Because, for so many years, we were manipulated into thinking that there was no way that if we said anything when we were growing up about the things that were going on, that anyone would believe us, or that we would, like we've said, that whatever this thing was, that we would be left to try to deal with it on our own. Mm-hmm. And we're like, maybe we wouldn't have had to deal with anything on our own. Right. Maybe it would have gone with him because maybe it was attached to our dad. And if he would have gone, been out of the picture, maybe we would have had a peaceful life.
Yeah.
And that's what we've kind of thought. We don't know. There's no way of knowing because things did not work out that way, but sometimes you wonder about attachments and if that's what it was. Right. And then obviously your ex had major attachments.
Yes.
And yes. Things that he had conflicts with, or however you want to say, things that he had to face, drugs and everything like that. And in your head, you get so messed up that it's like, well, I can help this person, or I can't do anything and it's too far gone, and nobody really cares anyway. So I'm just kind of stuck here, so.
And I think me being naive about drugs and stuff like that left the door open to manipulate even more. Mm-hmm. Well, if I was doing drugs, I wouldn't be like this and it wouldn't be like that. And then the fact that there wasn't money coming out of my bank account. So I don't know. But if he was making it, he didn't need the money
right
to come out of my bank account. I don't know. And
he even had you convinced that it was okay if he was going to get it off the street because he needed it. It was, well, I don't have this and therefore I need it, so I need to go get it off the street. Well, no, right. That does not mean that you need it. That means that your brain thinks that you need it. But if you're not given a prescription for it, or if you're abusing that prescription and therefore being finished with it weeks ahead of time, then obviously you're doing something you're not supposed to. But he had you, and I'm not putting you down. I'm just saying that this is what the enemy does, is works on your mind so much that with people and with circumstances on anybody, gets you in the right frame of mind. And that's how people get into drugs, get into drinking, commit suicide.
Right.
Because the devil gets in there, like with our brother. He found that one little hole that was like, all right, so you felt yourself starting to get addicted to these pills, so this is what it's going to be for the rest of your life. You've already done so good for these past 3 years. However, the next, for the rest of your life, all you're going to be is an addict. Right. That's it. Right. So, you know what? You might as well just take care of yourself.
Right.
And so that's what he did.
Your family's going to disown you. No one's going to want to be around you. You just got got your kids in your life. You got your grandkids in your life. They're all not going to want anything to do with you. You're just a disappointment. Yes. Which, to be honest, he was left to feel like he was a disappointment from
the beginning.
Yeah. So that just carried on for years.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it was right before, 2 years or so before he wound up doing that he found out the things that had gone on with that.
Yes.
So it was almost like the person that he looked up to so much and he always felt inadequate around was not the person that he thought he was. So that was the rug pulled out from under him. And then the realization that it wasn't even because of who he was, I think it was his gender.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that he wasn't
a girl.
Yeah, and he was just left, all the time. Mom would say, why don't you take him and go fishing, go do this and this. No, he doesn't need to go with me.
That's because he was going elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Because those were the times he came home drunk.
Yeah.
He wasn't really going where he was saying he was going.
Exactly
That's why he didn't want him going and tagging along with him. He knew, but when he walked out the door, he was not going where he said he was going.
And then also when our brother found out about what happened with us, he had such a hard time because he fought his own demons, but he also tried to protect us as much as he could or be there for us as much as he could. And that's what he said. He said, I'm so sorry that I wasn't there to keep things from happening. So in his mind, we feel, and we don't know for sure because nothing was ever said, but we feel like maybe he had that guilt on him also, that he didn't know anything about it and couldn't do anything about it because he didn't know, but his responsibility as an older brother would have been to protect us.
Right.
And because he didn't, he had guilt over that, even though we told him you didn't know.
Right.
There was nothing that you could do because you had no idea about it at that time.
Right. I just can't imagine how he was feeling to realize that I have tried so hard to be accepted by him.
Yeah.
My whole life, I have tried so hard to be accepted by him, to realize that I'm never going to be accepted by him because I'm not a girl.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's
because
of
the sick things that were going on. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right.
In Dad's head, So, yeah, that's right. So.
Yeah, it's sad that that's what would be going through someone's mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was probably a lot. I mean, with the alcohol, with the Percocet for the pain, with fighting for his disability, with finding out news like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was probably a whole lot. It would be hard for any of us to handle.
So I'm going to tell you something that happened today. We're talking about things that are still carried over into our adulthood and things that we still deal with. And, we had talked about, you don't like to be, you have to be facing everybody at the restaurant. And I happened to be at work today, and I had a patient that wanted to look at his x-rays because he had accidentally shot himself whenever he was 13 years old, and he had never got to see his x-rays. And so anyway, there was a couple things on there that he wanted to look at. So of course, I was like, yeah, it's your x-ray. You can come look at it all you want. So as he's trying to come out the door where I am, he's knocking, and I said, "You can come on out." And he was like, "No, it's locked." And so I was like, "Oh, okay." So I couldn't get the door unlocked. It's, it's an older door, so I couldn't get it unlocked. And he was like, "It's okay." And I looked at him, I said, "No, it's not." And, and I mean, I couldn't explain to him why it was not, but in my mind, I had to get that door unlocked. And the reason was because that is the way I come out of that room. If that door is locked, yeah, there's another exit, but this is the main way that I get out of that room.
Right.
If I can't get out of this room the way that I normally do and know which way I can go and somebody can block the other one, I'm not okay with that.
Right.
So before I could even pull up his x-rays and show him, I had to get the door unlocked.
Right.
Which only took, like 30 seconds, but it still was the point that in my head, no, this is not okay.
Right.
And you don't understand why this is not okay.
And the anxiety that you're feeling.
Yes.
That to other people, it's like, why is she spazzing
and
out?
and trying to keep it cool and not be like, no, you don't understand. I cannot be in a locked room with a man, that because most of like I've said before, the majority of our patients are men because we do coal mining physicals, and so anyways, it was just something today, like I said, that even after all of these years still carried over because it was like, no, I don't, if that door is locked and I can't come out then I don't have control of the situation and I have to be able to get out of that door. He said, "Are you claustrophobic?" I was like, "I guess you would say that." And that's all I said,
right.
Because there again, that's how I did all the years. It was, well, yeah, kind of, but, and you just say whatever to not have to explain situations, you know?
Right.
So yeah. But like I said,
yeah.
And it was, and that's what I said, like even today, it's ironic that here we are talking about the things that still bother us or carry over.
Well, that's one of the things that my ex-husband used to do.
Mm-hmm.
He used to get me back in that back bedroom and he would yell at me.
Yes.
And it's a small room. He was blocking the door and he would be yelling and cussing me.
Mm-hmm.
And that sent me into the whole fight thing.
Yeah.
And that's when I would like come out
Mm-hmm.
and be like, that's when I started taking up for myself. That's when I started getting mad back because I felt cornered.
Yeah.
He's yelling at me in this small room. He's blocking the door. And I don't do loud noises in small spaces.
Mm-mm.
And I do not like to feel trapped in.
Mm-mm.
So, yeah, that.
And we were even, I would say, like mentally abused growing up too. Because it was, you don't say anything, which is, you don't say anything back. If you do, you're going to be hit or whatever. I still remember my senior year in a high school asking to go to a snowball dance and him saying, "How do I know if you leave this house that's where you're going to go?" I had no intentions of going anywhere else. I was going to go to a snowball dance. That's all I was going to do. I know that people do other things. I mean, I'm not going to say that I was always innocent, never did anything wrong because, yeah, but that was not an intention of mine at all, was to go anywhere other than the dance. And he said, "If I let you go, the car that you leave this house in, I will go to the school and I will drive around throughout that whole time that you're at the dance to make sure that car does not leave that parking lot." And I said, "You just don't trust me at all, do you?" Well, that was the wrong thing to say because he stood up, slapped me across the face. Instead of talking to me like an 18 or 17-year-old adult or whatever, which a lot of parents would at that age and be like, "Well, no, listen, it's not that I don't trust you. It's just that I know how I was at that age." That was me talking back and therefore you just don't do that. So, slapped across the face.
Right.
So, things like that instead of regular conversations. We never had regular conversations.
And all that is just so you can decide that you don't want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what it was. Yeah.
I'm going to slap you across the face so that you get upset and say, I'm fine. I'm just not even going to go.
Mm-hmm.
That way he didn't have to worry about what you were doing.
That's exactly right.
And it wasn't so much worrying about what you were doing. It's the control thing.
Mm-hmm. And like we said, jealousy, because we were with somebody that, at that time I was my boyfriend, but it ended up being my ex-husband, And so, yes, I liked him. So he didn't like that either because there was somebody else in the picture,
Right. Right.
So, yeah, that's exactly how it was. So.
And I think he may have even been afraid of us having boyfriends and getting close to that person and trusting them enough to tell them what was going on, because that may have ended it all and him wind up in trouble for it.
And then 2 weeks before I got married the first time, we had an issue with our wedding invitations, and they ended up getting here late. So I was at my future in-laws at that time doing wedding invitations, and I had been down there till like midnight. And when I got home, I got in trouble for being gone too late. And he said, I'm not sure where you were. And literally all that had to be done was to pick up the phone and call to see where I was, because I would have answered or they would have let me talk to him. And this is 2 weeks before I got married. I was not even going to be living there anymore. But that was control.
Yeah.
So when I got home, I got in trouble.
Well, you weren't respecting him by coming home late.
Yeah. Yes.
Everything was about respect me. But respect is something that is earned.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how it was when we were growing up. It was
demanded. Yes.
And it's hard to respect someone that has that kind of attitude now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you want me to respect you? You better show me something to respect.
Which is something that we were going to talk about today too, is with people who have authority, I guess you'd say, over us, like such as work or things like that. I had a very, what's the word for it? Difficult boss who did not like me from day one.
Right.
At all. And had I not been in the work situation that I was in, if we would have been outside of work, there are numerous times that she and I probably would have already
come to blows.
Yeah.
Right.
And had it out. But because she was my boss, and the way that we were brought up and taught and things were beat in our head, you, quote, respect that person, even though I would never respect someone that acted the way that she did. But because she was my boss, I was not ever supposed to say anything back to her.
Right.
I was just supposed to take whatever she said or did. And you can ask anybody in that place, she singled me out numerous times over everybody else,
Right.
And I would go in her office and get in trouble. And because she took it, I would get upset, and she took it as like she was a bully, as me crying because she had upset me and all this other stuff. Well, she didn't realize like I was mad. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and it's taken everything from me.
Cry?
Yes, it was. Yes, and it was taking everything in me to not be like, you know what, I'm done. You can have this job. Plus, at that time, we were still helping to pay mom's bills too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I needed that job, but it was also hard to not say,
meet me outside.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yes. But because of how we were brought up, and it is a good thing to respect the people that, I'm not saying anything like about that, because you should.
Right.
But at the same time, like you said, you have to earn that respect.
Right.
And no one that worked with this person had respect for her because she earned it.
Exactly.
Nobody did.
Exactly.
So
I always felt inferior,
yes,
and insecure around a boss.
Mm-hmm.
And it was intimidating to me to even go in the office and even talk to them,
because you automatically feel like you've done something wrong
Right. Even if I was the one initiating
Yes.
the talk.
Yes.
It was like, I always felt like, this is going to be turned around on me, even if it wasn't anything that I was even.
You hadn't done anything wrong.
Right.
It was just that insecurity, like you say, because there were conversations that we'd have growing up that weren't supposed to be anything. Nothing. Just a conversation. And then the next thing you know.
I'm so glad we're having a sunshiny day. And the next thing you know, we're fighting or getting fussed at because, there's a cloud out there and it might rain.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's what it felt like.
Yes.
We're just making simple conversation. It's a pretty sunshiny day. Well, don't you see that dark cloud out there? And do you not think it's going to rain?
And what is that supposed to mean? What are you meaning by that?
Yeah.
Well, nothing, so yeah, it's funny that you say you feel inferior with people of authority. My boss actually messaged me today, and I was finishing with the patient, and he said, when you get a chance, give me a call. And I immediately was like, uh-oh. Yes. So I messaged back and I said, I don't like that. And he even messaged back like, ha ha ha, but at first in my mind, I was like, oh gosh, what did I do? What is going on? What am I going to get in trouble for? And when I even kind of put it off for a minute to call him because, it's like kind of almost like a panic mode.
Right.
But he's a really laid back,
and you're playing
chill.
Stuff through your head. What did I do?
Yes.
Is there something that I did? Could I have upset someone? Could I have said something that they took the wrong way? What's going on? Yes.
So you can already have like your defense in your mind because that's how it was growing up.
Right.
I mean, it was like, okay, I don't really know that I did anything wrong, but obviously I have by the tone. So let me figure out what I've done so I can at least say something when I go in here to be confronted about this.
Right.
But it ended up being like a really simple conversation. It was just something that was way too much to put in a text,
Right.
Right. But still, because of the things that we had gone through and the things that we have, the way that things were approached with us, we just automatically are like, oh gosh, and what have I done? Or, like you say, okay, well, whatever.
Right.
Even if I know I didn't do that, okay, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because if not, then it was an argument, and then it was don't argue with me,
Right.
because I'm right. There's nothing that you just said that was.
I have a really hard time, and even then, I had a hard time just saying whatever, you're
Mm-hmm.
right. Because I don't like to be wrong.
I didn't say you're right. I just said,
Whatever.
just shut up.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I
I didn't say
I guess
anything.
I do that. I went through a phase of, I'm going to argue my point until you realize that you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can think whatever you want to think. I don't care.
Yeah. With him, I just knew it wasn't going to matter with Dad,
Right. Yeah.
So it was just like,
and him
why
and
even try?
And we always said, I'm never going to marry someone like my dad. My second husband was my dad personified, like way, way blown out of proportion.
Mm-hmm.
He was just something else. But I was scared of his craziness, of what he might do when I'm sleeping, but I wasn't scared of him awake. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you knew that
I was like,
he wasn't nearly as.
He had that mouth, but
Yes.
I wasn't worried about him.
He didn't have anything to back it up when somebody was confronting him back.
Right.
But he was crazy enough to do something if you were not awake.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I didn't trust that. I mean, I could honestly say that I felt that he would be the type that would probably poison my food, poison my drink, and come at me in a passive aggressive way. But I don't think he would have come straight at me, because he really backed up when he spit in my face that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know what kept me from knocking him out other than the shock factor, because I was like, did you really just spit in my face? And then before I could even grasp what was going on, my oldest son was come busting through the bedroom door.
Mm-hmm.
He heard that, and that was it for him.
Mm-hmm.
You don't spit in my mom's face.
Mm-hmm.
And he backed way down then. But then after the situation was under control, it was my fault.
Yeah.
If you were a good parent, he would have never felt comfortable enough to come barging into our bedroom.
Yeah.
No, I was a good parent because I taught my kid that you don't mistreat a woman, and you definitely don't mistreat your wife. So I'm his mother. And
he's going to stand up for his mother. Yeah, exactly. Right. Regardless.
He didn't do anything when you slapped me in the leg. He didn't do anything when you slapped me in the arm. But as soon as you spit in my face.
And totally disrespected you.
Yes. Then it was, I'm going to take up for my mom. And I don't care how old you are. I think he was only like 16.
Yeah, probably.
But I was the terrible mom. I should have never let them have the idea in their head that they could come barreling through their bedroom door and say something to him.
Yes, yeah. So let me ask you this, because your kids are older. Mine's young, but we're talking about this and approaching everything that we've gone through. So with hearing how, I don't want to say easily he manipulated you, because it wasn't easily, but how he could turn things around to make you think, well, maybe he's not doing this, or maybe he doesn't have an issue with drugs or anything like that. People have asked us, how did your mom not know? And we've said this several times in this too, that we have no hard feelings towards her whatsoever. Right. And things came out when they're supposed to. So I guess what my question is with seeing how he could manipulate situations and how Dad was in relation to how he was, is it easy for you to see how Mom could have just been, and not saying she did, because she didn't have, we've said that she didn't know. And, I'm not saying that. All I'm asking is, if you had been in that situation, if something was going on with your kids, could he have said, I don't, there's nothing for you to worry about. You're just acting crazy. There's nothing like that in you.
Yeah. Because he is able to convince you that everybody's against him, to feel sorry for him. Like the kids and stuff are just trying to cause problems for him. Everything was about him. Yeah. And if I didn't notice that, then I'm stupid because I can't see that. And I don't care nothing about him and all this other stuff. So it was like a constant trying to make him feel like he was cared about, right, or loved. And this whole, you're going to respect me, and I should come before anything else because I'm your husband. Yes. And all this other stuff, to where, I honestly started thinking, well, maybe he's right. Maybe my youngest son has this issue. Maybe my youngest son is this, and maybe he is doing this, and maybe he is trying to manipulate, and maybe he is, because I was so messed up in the head from listening to all he was saying, and I was constantly in a fight state with him. It was constant. There was really, there might be one good day out of 2 weeks.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. Because he made it pure hell for you all.
Right.
He did. And like I said, when I'm asking these questions, I'm not trying to, this, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot or say that you were bad. I don't mean that. I'm just, when we're talking about things, and this is how he would, off of the podcast, it's like, things pop in your head, and that just made me, think about that, because, like I said, we've had at least 5 or 6 people say, well, how did your mom not know?
Right.
Or I don't understand.
Because they keep you in a constant state of worry. Like, Mom would have to worry about Dad taking money that was for bills and going and drinking. I had to worry about him taking money that was for the bills and going drinking. Him stealing my debit card, taking all the money out of my checking account and going wherever and doing a whole weekend of whatever and blowing $600 to $800 in a weekend. And then we're like straggling for 2 to 3 weeks trying to get, or 2 to 3 months trying to catch up with everything that was behind, because he decided to splurge that weekend. So I was constantly in that state, and I would have to think ahead.
Yeah.
He's picking an argument with me today so that he can leave. So I've got to get on my phone and make it to where no one can withdraw money from the ATM off of my card before he gets there and empties out my account again.
Right. Yes.
So it's a constant state of trying to be one step ahead of this person, plus trying to deal with everything else going on. You don't have time to focus on your kids because you're so focused on making sure they still have a roof over their head, because we might not even be able to make a house payment. We might not be able to pay the rent because what's he going to do with that money? So it was, where are we going to get food? I don't even have money for food.
And it was like even when everything came out and you had confronted him when you left, Mom had said that he was like, well, should I go and turn myself in or what? And Mom still at that point was just blown away because she's just finding out everything. And she was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't even know what's going on.
She's still trying to grasp what it...
And he's trying to cover himself.
And it was a bad way for her to find out. I regret that I been at it like that. But I think I had enough.
And you were also, I was going to say, pushed in a corner.
He had finally broke me.
Yep.
To the point that I didn't care who was around. I mean, I know Mom was there because I looked at her and said, you've been living with this monster pretty much all these years and you didn't even see it. It's right there in front of you and you didn't see it. But when he came in and said, you don't disrespect me like that. And I was like, I don't have respect for someone who has mistreated his kids for all these years. Because
you guys were at a ball game and you were coaching together and you had spoken something back to him and we were not to do that. I mean, it didn't matter that you were 30 some years old. You were not supposed to do that.
Right.
And so, like you said,
I'd had enough.
That was enough, So, yes.
I'm like, I'm not that little girl anymore. And I have my right to speak my opinion as an adult to an adult.
Yes.
And for you to talk to me the way you talked to me at that ball field. And then to come in the house and tell me I'm not to disrespect you like that. I was like, I'm sorry, but I don't have any respect for you right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's talk about disrespect. What about all the years of disrespect that we had? So, yeah, I mean, I lost it and that wasn't the way to say it. But, yeah, Mom was caught off guard. She didn't know what to say. And then all the years of the manipulation, I know that with that husband, I probably would have been the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they are the victim.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. And that's what I was asking you and saying. Yeah. So now, like I said, we've always been like, Mom, we have no hard feelings, nothing like that, because you were going through your own hell. She was just as much, if not more than we were. And, we're just getting the tip of the iceberg right now with her. She's just now started saying stuff. But you can see how your mind can just be so
and I never
manipulated and warped in order to be in like, yeah, I probably didn't see what I thought I saw, or I'm sure I didn't think. I'm sure that what I thought was going on wasn't going on.
With all that we went through, I never in a million years thought I would be married to someone like that. I thought that I had seen enough and knew enough to stay away from someone like that. But I'm telling you, some people are good.
Yeah.
Some people are really good. And when you try, I can't say that I trust everybody or try to trust. I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. But at the same time, try to protect myself with him. He had built himself up so much and had shown me I wanted someone who went to church with me. I wanted a Christian home. And that was how it started out.
Exactly. Yes. And like you say, the people that you talked to that knew him, that was exactly how he was. And so you're going by what you're feeling, plus other people that you totally had respect for. And had respect and had a relationship with them for a long time, and knew that they cared about you, and wouldn't lie to you about things. And they didn't lie to you by saying, oh no, he is a good guy. They had no idea either. They were blindsided.
They saw the person that I saw before marriage.
Yes.
Not the person that he actually was. They saw the facade.
Yes. Yeah, so that's why I was just wondering. Like I said, and I'm saying this more to, I guess, the audience than you. When we're talking, even like if it comes out like accusatory or anything towards each other, it's not like that. We're just talking, in conversations and just questions that have come up and thinking about things, and so if they come up, we just ask each other. That's just kind of how we are,
right?
Right. So,
yeah, we usually get to a point.
Yeah.
This is why I'm asking.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I can see why, because years of them being the victim.
Yeah.
Woe is me. I went through this. I had this going on. It's an I thing. It's just an I thing.
And I think that's why, I know that's why we have a hard time with people who do that now.
Right.
Well, I drink because of this, or I've gone through this and my life has been so hard. Okay. I see you. I know what you're saying. However, those are your choices.
Exactly.
I'm not perfect by any means. I do things wrong every day.
Yes.
But I have chosen not to drink, become an alcoholic, to not do drugs. So, like, I'm saying this as a joke, but I've never even smoked a joint, because I just, for one, I've never had desire to do that. But for two, there's things that went on in my head. You know what I mean? Like, there's things that have made me vulnerable to things. We have genetics that make us more vulnerable and more, what's the word? Like, not susceptible, but more genetically prone to doing things like this. And so therefore I have to make the conscious decision to not do things.
Well, I'm a control freak, and I don't like feeling out of control of myself. So it's hard for me to let my guard down to do anything like that, and to feel like I have to depend on someone else to keep me safe.
And I have someone in my husband's family who I guess I dealt with for about 3 years before I said she is very, all her life has been horrible and all of this stuff and everything like that. Nobody's ever had it as rough as she has. And, that's why she has to see a psychiatrist and medications, and nobody's ever had anything like this, like she does. But, anyway, finally one day I'd had enough, and I was like, do you want to talk about a life of hell?
Right.
And I just told her very few of the things that we've gone through. And the look on her face was just total shock.
Right.
And she said, no, I never went through anything like that.
Right.
And you almost want to shake him and be like, okay, well then, sorry about your luck. Sorry about your luck. Bless you. You have had a rough life. I'm not saying it, and this is not a competition to see whose life is worse. But at the same time, you can choose to wallow in that self-pity, or you can choose
to rise above it.
Yeah. And to not live there every day. Plus, I don't want to be a victim every day. And that's, we've said this too, that's why we say surviving darkness, because we survived everything we went through, and we're still surviving every day, living this every day and trying to just make it through. Yeah, I'm sure there's mistakes that we make all the time, but we're just trying. We're two people, a family who's gone through pure hell. Right. But we're trying.
Right.
And that's what we want to do with this podcast, is to help ourselves by talking about things. But also, like we've said 1,000 times, if there's anyone that we help, even if it's 1 or 2 people, that's what we want to do. You know, that's all that there is to just help somebody.
Was to shed light on darkness.
Yes.
Because the more it's hidden, the more it grows.
Mm-hmm. And like we said, with our family, this is it. It doesn't go anymore. This is the last generation that goes through everything that we went through.
And we're still fighting.
Yes, we are.
We're going to be fighting until our last breath.
Mm-hmm.
Because the enemy's not going to let up. As long as we're living for God, the enemy's not going to let up. And that's something that people need to realize. If you're living for God, that doesn't mean everything's
Hunky-dory.
peaceful. And yeah.
Yeah.
Because the devil, when you're not living for God, the devil's already got you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when you have your peace.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you're living for God is when you have most of your battles.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want you to prosper.
No.
His whole goal is to kill, steal, and destroy.
That's
plain
right.
and simple.
I was just getting ready to say that. Yes. Yes. So I guess we'll wrap that up for
This week.
this week, episode 10. Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you all for listening and for always like your feedback. We appreciate it. So we have our Facebook page that you guys can reach out to us on. We have, of course, we're on Instagram, Facebook,
TikTok.
yes,
TikTok.
and then we have our webpage.
We do.
And so any of that is, our webpage is www.survivingdarknesspodcast.com.
And that website will take you to any of those platforms that you need to go to.
Yes.
And you can it's even got the mail thing. You can email us straight from the website.
And before we go, we had talked about maybe opening up a post on the Facebook to see if there's any questions you all might have. So we'll put that on there, and that way, if you all have questions that you'd like for us to answer that maybe we haven't answered, then we could do one episode where we just answer those questions for you, because it's a lot of information and a lot of things that maybe we have just barely touched on that you'd like to know a little bit more about. So anyway.
And I'm sure that there are some questions like, I mean, anything. How old were you when you all started messing with the Ouija board?
Mm-hmm.
What caused you to start doing that? I mean, there's things that we know that we went through, and sometimes we might forget the small details when we're talking about stuff that maybe people might be interested in.
Yeah. So anyways, thank you guys for listening, and hopefully you'll tune in with us next week.